Hey everyone, I'm Jakejames Lugo, and welcome to the channel. And you see the title of the video, right? You see what I go through for you guys? I'm telling you, after this, y'all better hit that subscribe button because man, this sucks! And it's not just enough to say that it sucks, you guys need to see how much it sucks. But anyway, here's the intro to this. Devil May Cry 2 is the sequel to the original Devil May Cry on PlayStation 2, released back in 2003. This game is known as the black sheep of the entire series because of how infamous it's become for being the worst one. People really just didn't like this game for a number of reasons, but chief among them was just how far it strayed away from many of the things that made its predecessor so beloved by many. What's crazy is how this game was not directed by Hideki Kamiya or his team Little Devils, despite the first game being a big success. Instead, Capcom put Hideki Itsuno in charge of the game after another director who started development did such a piss-poor job. Because of all this behind-the-scenes nonsense, many things were changed up for Devil May Cry 2 despite the original plan to make this game bigger and more action-packed than the first game. But forgetting about that, what's going on with the story here? Devil May Cry 2 has a very weird placement in the timeline of the DMC series, taking place years after the original Devil May Cry, but sometime before the events of Devil May Cry 4. Yeah, it gets very confusing, but we'll touch on that another time. Anyway, the game is set in modern times and has Dante breaking into a museum to gather an artifact called the Medallia. This is where he meets Lucia, a mysterious woman who fights demons and is searching for other artifacts. She invites Dante to go with her to a place called Doomry Island, and introduces him to her mother Mathieu. The old woman tells Dante that her clan were once allies of his father Sparta, and asks him for help in stopping an evil businessman named Arius. This dude wants to gather Arcana artifacts for a ritual that will allow him to become immortal and gain the power of demons in order to rule over the human world forever. While Dante and Lucia head out to confront Arius, a lot of twists and turns reveal darker connections between Lucia and Arius, putting Dante in the middle of another crisis involving demons and his father's legacy. Compared to its predecessor, the game tries to be very ambitious and take the series into new territory. But is Devil May Cry 2 as bad as everyone remembers? Or was it misunderstood and misjudged by everyone over the years?
You called?
Till next time, son of Sparta.
Without any exaggeration whatsoever, the story in Devil May Cry 2 is really terrible. It's that bad, it's trash, it's absolute garbage. It's so bad, in fact, that all the events in this game are completely inconsequential to any of the other games in the DMC series. It's so bad that Capcom hardly even really acknowledges the existence of this game. It's really that terrible. I mean, it's bad in the sense where the personality of Dante, the main hero of the entire series, and even the previous game that was such a big hit back in the day, is completely not like his character was in the first game. He just sounds like a typical, cookie cutter, almost stereotypical, copy and paste version of himself, but in the worst way possible. He gives one-liners, he hardly ever really talks or really displays his personality like he did in the first Devil May Cry. It just is really weird, it comes off as awkward, and it feels like whoever was in charge of the game at the time, or whoever was really doing the writing and other aspects of this, really wasn't doing their job whatsoever. And here's the other thing too, I'm fine with another hunter that's a female like Lucia and stuff. I think she could have been interesting if handled a little bit differently. But what happened to Trish, who was such a big part of the first game? She's just completely absent from this game as far as the story stuff is concerned, which we'll get into later. But it would have been interesting to see her and Dante working together in this story and then teaming up with Lucia and dealing with all the other stuff they have to deal with in this game. I don't know why that decision was made. It just feels like all the time you invested in that character in the previous game is just thrown out the window for almost no reason whatsoever. I mean, this story is so bad, guys, that the recap for Devil May Cry 5, when they were going through all the entries of the series, gave this game 1 or 2 sentences and then completely moved on to Devil May Cry 1 and Devil May Cry 4. It's absolutely bonkers just how much everybody hates the story in this game, and I totally understand why. It's just, it's so terrible. But we're far from done, people. Oh no, sit down, get comfortable, because now we gotta talk about gameplay. And oh my god, is this one a doozy. I'm telling you, grab a drink, because you might need it after this. If there's one thing that Devil May Cry 2 gets right, it's the basics when it comes to the stylish action that the original game established. You could play as either Dante or Lucia, battling demons in a number of stages as you progress through the story. You get rated on how well you fight demons with your attacks and chain together combos in order to look stylish in combat. That's all good, but everything starts to fall apart very early on. You'll quickly hate the camera in this game with how awkward and stifling it can be. The camera has this tendency to get stuck in one spot and force you to attack enemies off screen or dodge attacks you can hardly see. The worst part? You can't really move the camera at all, and if you're stuck in a corner, you're out of luck. I had to really struggle through some of the fights that would have otherwise been super easy with better camera control and perspective. But that's just one thing wrong here. The rest of the combat and exploration is vastly inferior to the first game. Dante and Lucia both have an arsenal of weapons they can use, but they're definitely not equal. Dante gets a variety of swords and guns, while Lucia has her dual blades and throwing knives. You'll gather new weapons as you play through the story, but I found myself sticking to one selection for both characters throughout the game. Compared to Dante, playing as Lucia feels dull since she doesn't have many of the exciting guns that Dante can use. Her throwing knives are just lame, and her basic attacks are almost the same as Dante's. However, the real disappointment here is the handling of the Devil Trigger. You could still change forms and attack enemies with increased power, but Devil Trigger feels neutered in this game. It takes a lot longer to charge up a full meter, and it runs out a lot faster than you think. At the same time, Devil Trigger doesn't feel as powerful as it probably should. I didn't really see the difference in some fights when activating Devil Trigger. My attacks just didn't seem like they were doing that much more damage. In addition to this, the game tries to make you equip specific abilities to your Devil Trigger in order to get around certain obstacles within a stage. These can be used after finding certain items and using them in a variety of very situational circumstances. Other items you can find also change the element of your Devil Trigger and open up new kinds of attacks. Equipping the right item can change your element from fire to lightning and ice-based forms. This would be pretty cool if it wasn't so ham-fisted and underutilized. Some enemies have weaknesses you can exploit with different elements, but that won't matter for the majority of others. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, because there's a lot more with this gameplay that just simply doesn't come together very well. Everything from the level design to how monotonous it looks, to the camera being such a pain in the butt, the different moves you have access to, and just the ability to get those stylish combos and stuff are all vastly inferior compared to Devil May Cry 1. Everything about DMC 2 just, again, it feels like a hodgepodge of ideas that could have been cooked a little bit longer, or at least put together in a better way. Everything that we're getting here is just completely asinine. It's just terrible, guys. I mean, even the concept of having two playable characters, which is totally fine in of itself, but I would have loved some more variation between the two characters, or again, having a third one with Trish part of the story, even though she becomes playable later on. But just, they're way too similar between Dante and Lucia as far as the moves are concerned. You don't get enough like really good or interesting aspects about each individual one. While Dante has all the great weapons and the guns and all these other cool swords and stuff, Lucia has her own stuff, but like the daggers are just not as interesting as the guns. And her moves, again, are very similar to Dante's, and they hardly ever really show her personality or do much more beyond what you already know with Dante. But another thing I do want to mention is like some of the really stupid decisions with the stages and the missions that are in this game. For example, those water levels. There's a couple stages that both Dante and Lucia have that are individual to them that the other character doesn't get to go to. And there's these water stages for Lucia that are absolutely horrible. They drag on for way too long. They're very monotonous. They're dull. Like a lot of your moves that you would normally have in the rest of the game, you don't have access to because you're floating around in the water. It just is very long and boring, and I feel like it just didn't need to be there. You could have taken those levels out completely and moved on with the rest of Lucia's story and completely not lose anything whatsoever. It was just bonkers to me that they made this decision. And then finally, I do want to comment on the boss fights because, my god, the boss fights in this game are vastly worse than what you got in the previous game. I know I complained and criticized the first Devil May Cry with some of the boss fights and how cheap they can be and like how a little bit weird some of those fights can be, but at DMC 2, like it's crazy, man. Like there's this fight that Dante has with a helicopter that's infested with some sort of like demon like energy or magic and stuff, and the fight itself is just really terrible. Like the game wants you to fly in the air with your Devil Trigger and actually attack it in the air, but the air combat is really bad in this game. It's like you can't really do do much besides that, or just be on the ground and fire your guns at this chopper, and the fight just goes on for way too long. You don't do enough damage, especially if you didn't upgrade your weapons. The helicopter just targeting it's so off camera most of the time. It's really crappy. Like, anybody that played this game back then, especially if they were testing it, I don't understand why they thought this was good, or at least why this was acceptable. Especially when the first game had much more better boss fights that I feel like were a little bit much more well figured out, and again, designed so much better than the ones we got here. And the crazy thing is, besides that helicopter fight, there's other boss fights that are very similar to this, or just as dull as that one. I could literally be here all day criticizing every little aspect of it, but you guys get the general idea. So let's move on to some of the extra content that we get in Devil May Cry 2, which there's more here, which is cool, but in the sea of garbage that is this game, it might not be saying that much. Now, there is extra content within Devil May Cry 2, much kind of like the first game, but you only get to see it if you can bear through with most of the big issues I've mentioned already. You have to complete the game both with Dante and Lucia in order to unlock the harder difficulties, such as hard mode and must die mode. I honestly think this is a bit much and just pads out the game significantly, but that's just my opinion. Once you beat the game on normal with both characters, you can unlock Bloody Palace mode. This is the first time we see this in the Devil May Cry series, and it's actually a neat idea. It's probably the only good thing to come out of Devil May Cry 2 whatsoever. Bloody Palace has you fighting demons continuously in ascending floors that get tougher as you go on. After defeating a group, you can move on to the next floors within increments of 1, 10, or 100. You heard that right, you could go from floor 1 all the way to floor 100 if you wanted to. This goes on until you're defeated in battle or reach the 9,999th floor, in which you're rewarded with orbs based on your progress. This is a great way to gain more orbs to upgrade your weapons and buy items, but it only really helps if you plan on taking on the harder difficulties. Speaking of, hard mode and must die mode are incredibly cheap and frustrating to get through with both characters, so I honestly wouldn't recommend playing through them unless you want to see more of the extra content and look past all of the game's flaws. But if you absolutely need to know what else you get for finishing them, let me save you a bit of time. Apparently, Capcom had a promotional deal with the Diesel clothing brand, which gives you alternate outfits for both Dante and Lucia that are based on Diesel clothing. You get this for beating the game once with each of them on normal. But if you finish the game on hard mode with both characters, you get an additional costume for each of them as well. What sucks here is that you can unlock Trish from Devil May Cry 1 as a playable character only after you finish the game with Dante in hard mode. This means you gotta play through this game twice in order to get Trish. Not cool whatsoever. But if you think that's bad, guess what? In order to get Dante's original outfit from Devil May Cry 1, the good-looking Dante, you need to complete this game for a third time in Dante Must Die mode. Dick move, Capcom, just saying.
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, no, to the no, no. Hell to the no, no.
I should also mention that there's some bonus pictures you could see when you beat the last mission using certain costumes or certain characters. Real talk though, these are really not worth the extra effort. There's definitely a lot more bonus items post-game in here, but when the frustrating journey to get them leads to a mediocre payoff, that really doesn't say much.
You don't need to worry about me. I'm happy if I can die like a human.
No. Devils never cry.
But...
Let's leave it to fate. Heads, I go. Tails, you go.
Look, Bloody Palace mode is still a neat concept, and I think that even though I could criticize it being like too monotonous and it takes a little bit too long to gain access to, I still appreciate it as a good alternative to the rest of the gameplay that's in the main story. I think it's a good way to level up your weapons and get certain items over the course of the game, especially if you're going into the other difficulties. However, my one big point of contention is with the other extra content. Again, a playable Trish should have been part of the main story. She was such a huge part of Devil May Cry 1, now she's just absent from this story. She's Dante's partner at the end of DMC 1. Where the hell did she go? And why the hell did Dante just leave her? Like, there's no explanation for this, and it's kind of stupid, especially if she's already a playable character in this game as an unlockable that you have to finish all this other stuff before you get her. I think that's just so dumb. So after everything that I've said, can I recommend that you guys check out Devil May Cry 2? Hell no. Absolutely not. This game is trash. It's absolute straight garbage. You could completely miss out on this game and be totally fine playing the rest of the DMC series, because everything that goes on with this game, from the gameplay, the story, and everything else about it, is completely inconsequential to the rest of the series. It's just something that you just don't need to spend time on. There was a lot of terrible decisions that were made with this game, maybe due to a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that was going on, a lot of the changes and stuff, but still, we ended up with a really terrible sequel to a game that was really freaking good back on the PlayStation 2, and they could have really hit a home run with the sequel, but ended up giving us a total turd. If you're still curious about Devil May Cry 2, despite everything I've said up to this point, and you want to play it for yourself to see what the big deal is, you could check out the game over on the Devil May Cry HD collection that's on PlayStation 4, or you could get the game on Nintendo Switch right now, but in all honesty, there's no reason for you to play this game. There's so many better games or better entries in the Devil May Cry series, and maybe even better games that are part of this genre, that you don't need to waste your time on Devil May Cry 2. It really is straight trash, it's absolute garbage, it's a complete waste of time.
Yeah, let's go all the way to hell.
Anyway, people, those are my thoughts about Devil May Cry 2, and thank God I am done with this game, because I was straight up not having fun with it when I was playing it for review. You see what I put myself through for you guys? Hopefully you hit that subscribe button after putting myself through this torture. The only really good thing to come out of all this is that I get to show you guys my Power Icon shirt for the first time here on the channel. Yeah, there goes my logo on a shirt. It's pretty awesome. But besides all of that, that's just my opinion about Devil May Cry 2. Let me know what you guys think about it down below in the comments section. Tell me, are you a fan of Devil May Cry? Did you actually like Devil May Cry 2, even though you'd be dead ass wrong? Or are you a fan of other entries of the series? Or what are some of the other games that you love that were inspired by Devil May Cry in this genre? There's plenty of them out there. Put all that stuff that you guys want to talk about down below in the comments section. Thanks for watching this video, everyone. Go ahead and click the boxes on the side to see more videos and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to go visit my Patreon page for exclusive gaming content that I know you'll really love. Hope you have a chill day. Peace out and stay epic, everybody.